Hey guys, I'm back with my thoughts on the last two episodes of The Last of Us Season 2. With my moving into a new place, I didn't have enough time to get my thoughts on each individual episode, so I decided to condense my thoughts on both episodes into one video. Also, I needed some time to process what happened in the last two episodes. There's a lot of stuff that occurred that was really heavy to digest, particularly in episode 6. To get something out of the way real quick, we'll cover this later on. I do find this season to be somewhat of a step down in comparison to the last season. It's not bad. There are no bad scenes or episodes in this show. I know some people will point to the whole "I'm gonna be a dad" line.
Any same old tired playbook.
Hey, Future Joe here. Just to clarify something with all of yous, this is my honest take on the show. You could call me a blind fanboy in all the ways that you could come up with. This is honestly how I feel, and with the way The Last of Us fan base has turned into, I'll be honest, I hesitated to put this video up for that reason. It's just so negative with the discourse surrounding Season 2 that I haven't even bothered trying to talk about it with other people for that reason. Just carrying over from what we saw in Part 2 5 years ago. Save that for a later video, possibly. But if you don't like anything I have to say in here, don't bother watching this video. If you want to hear what I have to say, even if we disagree, feel free to stick around. But just an FYI, I'm not blind to the negatives of this season. I got a soapbox thing for you at the end of this video. So if you want to hear that, stay tuned at the very end. Or you could just skip right ahead to the 32-minute mark, 33-minute mark, or whatever. Somewhere around that time span, just to clarify something. That's all. But with spoilers and all, let's talk about the last two episodes. Starting with episode 6, The Price, directed by Neil Druckmann himself. This might be the best episode of the series so far, because we see the filling in of certain gaps in that 5-year time span between the events of the first season and this season, showing us the gradual decline of Joel and Ellie's relationship and how she was inevitably able to figure out that he did indeed lie to her about what happened in Salt Lake City. This episode not only recreates certain moments from the second game when we see flashbacks to Joel and Ellie's bond in that 5-year time span, but also shines a new light on Joel's past. The very first thing that we see in this episode is he and Tommy as kids, with Tommy worrying about whether or not his father's going to beat him because of what happened with him. It threw me off guard for a second because I didn't quite understand what was happening, but then I realized when we saw young Joel, oh my god, we're going to see Joel and Tommy as kids. And then in comes his father, who's a local police officer in Austin, played by the one and only Tony Dalton. Fans of Better Call Saul will definitely get a kick out of this. Joel comes up with a lie to protect Tommy, but his father sees right through him and calls him out on it. To his surprise, his father, Javier Millard, sits down with him and talks about something that happened to him when he was a child. He was a victim of abuse as well, at the hands of his own father, Joel's grandfather. He stole a candy bar, he was forced to give it back, and then his father clocked him right in the jaw. And he felt a huge amount of guilt and shame for many years. And in a rare moment of vulnerability, he admits to Joel that he kind of doesn't really know what he's doing.
You know, when it's your turn, I hope you do a little better than me.
I have father issues of my own. My father was never physically violent with me, but the relationship between him and I has been quite odd for most of my life. And I've never really seen him be that vulnerable with me, maybe only once or twice, but I never had the same relationship that I had with my own mother, where we're able to talk about just whatever. My dad's very simple and very surface level. With some exceptions, he doesn't really let anybody else in, not even me. And for somebody back in the early 1980s who was putting on this macho man facade, as I interpreted it, this was a really big moment, and I think it speaks volumes to something that was going on in the past. This touches on a deeper issue about where's the line between discipline and physical abuse? Not to get on my soapbox or anything, but us as the human race have been trying to, in many ways, improve on what previous generations failed to do. And in the case of discipline versus abuse, this is something that parenting has taken a huge turn on by trying to be more and more kind and understanding and not physically violent with their children. I'm not a father, I don't have children of my own, but I would never in a million years be physically violent with them, and I would never discipline them physically. And I know plenty of people who have experienced physical violence or even sexual abuse at the hands of their parents. And some of my good friends or closest friends even have dealt with those things. And it takes a huge toll on you. Then we fast forward to the present day, or the flashback in the case of this, with Joel creating a birthday gift for Ellie for her 15th birthday, making a guitar, getting her a birthday cake with the help of Seth. And we also learn a key part of his backstory, that he used to be a cop in Milwaukee. And that sets Joel off a little bit when he hears this information. More than likely a reminder of what he used to deal with his own father, who was a cop. And I guess to jump ahead real quick to the end of the episode, other people have pointed this out, but it's pretty clear as to why he threw Seth to the ground like that when he called Ellie that slur. With the experiences that he had as a child, primitive instincts would naturally take over. Not only does he have a habit of lying to people in order to protect them, it's part of a bigger thing that Joel has been dealing with his whole life. He has a savior complex. He feels a need to be the protector for everybody, which is an admirable thing, but it also comes off as very codependent in my book. And I've been in some recovery circles that have dealt with codependent behavior of some kind. Doesn't always bode well for both sides. But the series of flashbacks consists of one milestone for Ellie. Each one is her birthday. The first one is her 15th birthday, then 16th, 17th, and 18th. With this one, Joel puts all this detail into creating a guitar for her since he promised to teach her how to play. Brings her home a birthday cake and gives her the guitar, but not before she grabs a huge wad of it and shoves it right in her face. One of the funniest things I've ever laid eyes on. And she's also a kid, so why wouldn't she jump at the chance of going all in on some kind of big sweet like that? But it's in this moment where Joel plays the song Future Days for Ellie in a way to express the love and affection he has for her, as if she was his own child. Just as beautifully done as it was in the game. One thing to note about the song Future Days: this song didn't exist in 2003, which in the show is when the apocalypse starts. In the game, it started in 2013. The song came out in 2013 on the album Lightning Bolt, which is the shirt that I have right here. Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin discussed what they could possibly do with that. Ultimately, they decided that they didn't care and that the song was too important to pass up. If it were me, I would have chosen something like Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town, which if it wasn't for the song I Am Mine by Pearl Jam, that might actually be my favorite song by them. If you're curious, give it a listen. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous song. And since the title of the first episode of the season was called Future Days, this is probably the closest that we ever get to see Joel and Ellie be truly happy, besides the museum scene. Just like in the game, Joel can barely look up in Ellie's direction as he's playing this song for her, and Ellie's reaction to hearing these words coming out of his mouth, I'm failing to find the words that describe just how powerfully, emotionally beautiful this whole thing is. In fact, I probably just described it perfectly that way. There's just something about Pedro Pascal's performance and how he's able to convey Joel's emotions in this way. I can't really find any right words to describe it, other than the thing to note that clearly Joel is channeling Johnny Cash in this situation.
All my stolen missing parts I've no need for anymore.
Our future days, days of you and me. But in the next flashback we get is Ellie's 16th birthday when they head to the museum and Joel surprises her with the dinosaur statue outside the building. In complete shock and awe over the sight, she climbs up the dinosaur, which is something you're able to do in the game, but she doesn't jump into the water, which is actually a really smart move because had she done that, she wouldn't have been able to listen to the tape that Joel gives her in the space capsule. In the video games, it's one thing because it's animation. In live action, though, you can't get away with that stuff. And for time purposes with this episode, this sequence is a lot more condensed because in the game you have more freedom to walk around and explore certain areas. We don't get to hear the references to Jurassic Park when they see the dinosaur skeletons, nor do we get this hilarious moment right here.
Oh, hello. Sorry, the dinosaurs are busy right now.
What are you doing?
Oh, wait. One of the dinosaurs is here. Joel, it's for you.
Very funny.
That is pretty funny. Did you get it? It's because you're old.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
This one's brain was the size of a walnut. Oh, no way. Looks like you two have something in common. Oh, ha ha ha, good one. But it's not just the dinosaur stuff. We get to see her go into the space exhibit, and Ellie has a huge interest in going to outer space. Given the situation of the apocalypse, the chances of space travel are non-existent. So what we get to see in the space capsule, just like in the game, is the closest that Ellie will ever get to experience that dream that she's always had her whole life. Joel sneaking in the cassette tape telling her that this is a thing that took a mighty effort to find. To this day, even 5 years later, I've always wondered, what exactly did you have to do to get that tape? I'm not going to be able to really do it justice, but seeing how it translates from the game to the live action spectrum, I was worried that it was going to come off very half-assed, but no, it was just as gorgeous as it was the first time around. Seeing the lighting go to black and the sunlight orbiting over Ellie's face, Gustavo Santaolall's music just strumming away, I literally don't know the polite word for it. It's probably the happiest that we ever get to see Joel and Ellie being together as a father-daughter duo. Two people that have been dealt so much tragedy, they finally have a moment to experience some pure joy and happiness. I would go as far as to say that this is the peak of their future days. But the moment unfortunately gets tainted as they head back to their horses to go back to Jackson. Ellie notices a group of fireflies swarming around a nearby bush. Clearly a reminder that Ellie's had reservations in the back of her mind that Joel has been lying to her about what happened in Salt Lake City. In the game, it was a little more obvious when she's going through this one area and gets ambushed by this warhog that's running around the museum. Joel finds her and they look at the wall and they see a graffiti art of a firefly logo with the word liars painted underneath it. Maybe some could argue in the game that it was a little more hard-hitting for the tension to become notable, but I personally don't have a strong preference for either one. Then the next flashback we get is Ellie's 17th birthday. Joel comes home with a chocolate cake. He hears a commotion going on inside Ellie's room and sees her getting a tattoo on her arm where her bite mark was, which this episode shows how she was able to get it covered up. She burned it with acid, and now she's getting a tattoo to completely cover it up so nobody's the wiser. But also the tattoo artist is a young girl, and they were kinda getting a little too close for comfort, if you know what I mean. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Joel is clearly not happy with this sight, so he chases the tattoo artist out, and Ellie is also a little high from their experience. Kind of a natural response of a father when he sees their child acting in a way that's not appropriate. But given that he never got to experience this with Sarah, and now he's experiencing this for the first time with Ellie, he's having a natural, viscerally emotional reaction to this by being angry with what she's doing. And given that he's not too thrilled about her experimenting with a girl, as he quotes it, whereas in the game, when he finds out about Ellie and Dina, when he sees the two of them kiss, he actually comes off as more understanding. Given that the game started in 2013, by that point gay rights and gay marriage were more accepted by the general public. In the year 2003, we hadn't gotten to that place yet, so it makes sense for him to have that kind of reaction when he sees Ellie with another girl. And it's only when Ellie turns 19 and he sees her with Dina that night. Having gotten to know Dina, he starts to become more understanding of same-sex relationships and is willing to become more open of who Ellie could possibly date in her future love life. Given that Joel is basically a helicopter parent in many ways, Ellie decides to move into the garage. He tries to lay some ground rules with her, but she throws it back in his face saying, no, this isn't your house. They gave it to you. You don't own this place. And he realizes that she's right, and he decides to let her go her own way. But then the next flashback is a crucial one. He and Ellie go out on patrol, and we find out what exactly happened with Eugene. Now, in the previous episodes, it's established that Joel did indeed kill Eugene. Gail reveals this in a session that she has with Joel, and that she still hates him for what he did, even though she understands why. So when they come across Eugene, we as the audience are meant to remember, oh, wait a minute, Eugene. This is where Joel kills him, isn't it? As soon as I realized what was happening, I started to tense up, and I was dreading the inevitable. Oh, and Eugene is played by none other than Joe Pantoliano.
Keyword, tactical, displaying finesse and subtlety in achieving a goal.
Yes, he's also in The Matrix, which there's a poster of in the show in Ellie's room, but that's besides the point. This, to me, is a combination of the 3rd and 7th episodes from the first season, whereas we have a character in the game who's only mentioned by name, but the show expands on this element, giving us a more emotionally heavy arc, which is relevant to the overall themes of The Last of Us series. Episode 3 of the first season did that with Bill and Frank's relationship, whereas Episode 7 explored Ellie's backstory and how she got bit and what her first love was like with Riley. Ellie gives him a similar test that was given to her by the Fireflies, and having him count to 10 holding his hand out, realizing that he still has time, she decides to go get Gail, and Joel promises to bring him back alive. He walks Eugene down to the lake, who's desperately calling out for Gail, and Joel says to him, if you love someone, you can still see their face. I must say, in this one small moment, just like with Tony Dalton earlier in this episode, Joe Pantoliano's performance is truly, truly superb. For someone who I think has a reputation of playing smart-ass side characters, this is probably the most dramatic work that I've ever seen from him. Dare I say it, it's probably the best I've ever seen from him. And we all know why, for all good reason. I'm a main guy! And I won't give away any details about Of Mice and Men, but this scene is very similar to a moment that happens towards the end of that story. If you know the story of Mice and Men, you'll know what I mean. Now, whether or not Joel was justified in killing Eugene because of the rules of not bringing anybody who's infected back to their settlement, I mean, I understand why he stuck to the rules, but I also understand why Ellie wanted to bring him back so he could have one final moment with his wife. Just like with Joel saving Ellie from the Fireflies, there really is no right or wrong answer in this situation. Ellie comes back and sees what happened to Eugene, and this serves as a confirmation for her that Joel has indeed been lying to her about what happened in Salt Lake City. Only further confirmed when he lies to Gail about what happened to Eugene. And then right on the spot, she tells Gail right in front of Joel and Tommy what actually happened. It's done differently in the game, where there's a series of flashbacks where Ellie does try to confront Joel about what happened, and in the final flashback before we get to Ellie being 19 years old, she runs away from Jackson to go to Salt Lake City and sees evidence of what Joel did that day when they broke out. But it's only when Joel arrives and she confronts him one more time, tell me what happened, and then he confesses. I think it's done better in the show because Ellie sees the exact same look that Joel gave to her when he lied to her about what happened with the Fireflies. And she throws his own words right back in his face.
You swore.
And it's not really clear in that moment whether or not Joel realizes what she's talking about. And excuse the word, but I think we can all realize that he's thinking, oh shit. I knew this was coming. Oh, and this one detail of Joel going to Gail about what's going on with Ellie, drawing a moth on some of the pieces of paper she has in her room. Gail reveals to him that it's actually a symbol of death and not change. She's also reading a book that has to do with the apocalypse. I don't remember the name of the book offhand. Other YouTubers have talked about it, like Screen Crush and New Rockstars. But it's all these little things that both games and the show have been able to do that add more and more thematic layers to the overall story of The Last of Us, and I love seeing that kind of stuff.
Is there a doctor's in sign on me like Lucy from Peanuts?
Is the doctor in? No, I think she's way out.
But then we get to see in some of the final moments of this episode that Ellie did indeed go to talk to Joel on the porch the night before he died. Minor spoilers for anybody who doesn't know the game. This actually happens at the very end of the game. I think in this case it was a smart move, because had we waited so many years and many seasons to see this moment, it would have been a really bad idea, and audiences either wouldn't have remembered what was going on, or they would have just gotten impatient over wanting to know what exactly happened. Did Ellie go indeed back to talk to Joel that night before he died? Both times it was an emotionally heartbreaking and I would say a bittersweet moment. And the show, once again, I think is done a lot better. Ellie confronts him that she's always known, since he gave her the same look that he gave her many years ago, and he realizes that he has no other way of backing out of this, finally confirming that he did indeed lie to her. And it also confirms that Ellie would have chosen to go out in a sacrificial way, feeling like her immunity was indeed her purpose. I can only speak for myself, but I don't think I could have let Ellie go out like that. I definitely would have saved her. Even if it meant damning the whole human race potentially, I think I'd rather just have Ellie around. Separate issue that we can get into another time. But what really hits hard for me with this scene is that he actually tells her that he loves her. Something that we never heard him say in the games, and not up until this point in the series. And he says the same words that his own father told him many years ago when he was 16.
Well then, I hope you do a little better than me.
He finally understands what his father was going through in a way, even though throughout this episode we never see him be physically violent with Ellie, but he's still violent towards others in a protective way, and that's only going to rub off on somebody like Ellie who already has a violent heart to begin with. So in a way, Joel did indeed do better than his own father by showing Ellie more love and compassion for her in the ways that he knew how, but he still comes up short with his deceitful nature, his selfishness, and his violent behavior. In fact, that line of "I hope you do a little better than me," it's something that I have been striving towards for most of my life, almost at 35 years old now. Now, I don't fault my father for not knowing exactly what to do as a parent. I think he was doing the best he could with what he knew. And my own mother, thank God, was the one parent that was involved with me and my sister. And without her, I wouldn't be where I am right now, up here and in here. So Mom, thank you very much. But Eric Voss from New Rockstars brought this up, and I completely agree with him on this. Or maybe it was Ryan Airy from Screen Crush. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you guys want to watch either video, just let me know which one. We as human beings are always trying to do better than what came before with our previous generations. Not just with interpersonal relationships, but with society as a whole. But inevitably, there's always this nagging feeling that we came up short, and we just inevitably have to trust in God or the universe that we did the best we could, and that future generations can learn from us and improve on what we did. And in the case of Joel and Ellie, he saw what his father did to him and Tommy as a kid. He has been striving to do better ever since. And inevitably, he does get to a point with Ellie that she's going to be her own person, and all he can really do is trust that she's going to do better than him. And to quote a very wise old Jedi in a galaxy far, far away,
"We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters."
As for Ellie being quickly willing to forgive Joel, I've heard some people criticize this, saying that it was too quick and she should have had more time to be mad at him when she learned the truth about all this. I understand the argument. I can only speak for myself, but I have a tendency to be much more quick to forgive than others. Not everybody's going to operate on the same timetable as being willing to forgive somebody for a wrong that they've done to them. You can only hold a grudge against somebody for so long, and inevitably, we need human connections in order to survive emotionally. And it's clear throughout the show that she does indeed love Joel very much and looks up to him and respects him. He is her father for all intents and purposes. And her willingness to try to forgive him is all that he really needs to hear. It was the one sliver of hope that he had left, knowing that not all hope was lost between the two of them, and that was it. The next day, he was killed by Abby. And just like in the game, I think it's a moment that she wishes that she could go back and change. Try to be light on some of the spoilers of the second game in case you guys don't know. Ellie spent so many years holding that grudge against Joel, and it's only when he gets killed by the hands of Abby, she's not only mad at Abby, but she's mad at herself for not forgiving him sooner when she feels like she should have, which speaks into the final image of her going back to the theater to meet up with Jesse and Dina. Probably after beating Nora to a pulp, more than likely she was thinking about all those memories that she had with him in that 5-year time span. And it begs the question, is she doing any better than Joel? From what we see in this season, not so much. And I have to say, Neil Druckmann helming this episode, it was literally like watching the stuff in the video game come to life. Now, obviously that's the case with the entire series, but with Neil Druckmann behind the camera in certain episodes, it's explicitly clear that his love and passion for this world is on display. Now, Craig Mazin has that same love and respect too, but Neil Druckmann's the overall creator. He's basically the George Lucas / Stan Lee of the Last of Us universe. And also knowing that this is going to be the last time that we see Pedro Pascal potentially for a while, because he's going to be busy for the next several years in the MCU as Reed Richards. Might as well capitalize on this moment now while you have time. Then we get to episode 7, The Convergence, directed by Nia Corrado Lopez. I don't know if I got that name correct. Ellie has come back from torturing Nora, reveals to Dina right on the spot what information she learned from her with Whale and Wheel, how violent she got with Nora, and tells her what Joel actually did in order to warrant him getting killed by Abby and her friends. Hearing this information from Ellie, her reaction is basically, okay, maybe this mission wasn't as righteous as I thought. And it's another indicator from the universe to Ellie that revenge is ultimately not worth it and it's best to just let it go. This episode also gives us a pretty big insight on the character of Jesse, played by young man Zeno. Again, hopefully I said that correctly. A different portrayal of him in comparison to the game, where he was a lot more compassionate and somewhat naive, I would say, but also had a very noble sensibility to him. That nobility is still there, but he's a lot more stoic and stern, in this situation at least. He's like the voice of reason and the older brother for Ellie that she never had. Because when they go into the streets to look for Tommy, they see a Scar getting held hostage by one of the WLF squads. Ellie instinctively tries to go out to save him, but Jesse holds her back. Just like Joel, primitive instincts are starting to take over. And there's a lot of back and forth that goes on between Ellie and Jesse throughout this episode, and how she is accused by Jesse of being very selfish and that everything she does is for her and nobody else. Whereas Jesse's a lot more selfless, and he pours himself into other people just like Maria did when she lost her own child. Now, Ellie had accused Joel in the last episode of being selfish, but Jesse, I think, does have a point. She really is not much better than Joel in that category. She does care about other people, and so did Joel, but with his savior complex, he felt like he had to protect everybody else. And for 20 years, to kind of go on a sidebar for a second, he went into himself to protect his own well-being because he was afraid of letting people in until he met Ellie. And Jesse's priorities become a lot more important because not only is he next in line to be a key member of the council for Jackson, he has an unborn child on the way. I actually really like young man Zeno as Jesse here. I was kind of worried that we weren't really going to get much screen time with him, where we have some gameplay dialogue. We get moments of settling down and getting an insight into Jesse's personality and his mindset, and how he ultimately does care about other people, and he did have a tendency to be selfish when a survival group came by for 2 weeks, and he had a romantic attraction to this one girl who was part of this family, but ultimately he decided that he was better off in Jackson because of what he was taught by them as he grew up. Jesse's purpose comes from the sense of community that Jackson offers to everybody. And I guess to confess something here, I kind of want to live in Jackson. I mean, look, I realize that the world of The Last of Us is absolutely horrible outside of the Jackson walls. I wouldn't exactly like to go outside of those walls if I did have a choice. With the way things are going right now in real life, if there's a way for me to be transported into that universe and stay in Jackson for the rest of my life, please do so. I think at this point anything is better than this craziness that we got going outside of my own walls out there in the world. And when we see Ellie pick up the Sesame Street book with Grover on the cover called The Monster at the End of the Story or whatever, again, just like with the book that Gail was reading when Joel went to visit her, another thematically relevant Easter egg that plays into the notion that Ellie is indeed the monster and Abby might not be the devil that she's made her out to be for killing Joel. Because the story in that book, Grover is horrified by the possible monster that's being hyped up, only to realize that he is indeed the monster that they're talking about. But Jesse and Ellie hear some radio chatter deducing that Tommy is nearby as a lone sniper. They go to this vantage point to figure out what's going on, and she sees his Ferris wheel in the distance with a whale on the cover of this one wall, realizing that's the place that Nora was talking about, thinking that Abby's actually there hiding out. Jesse tries to reason with Ellie, talking about what's good for the community.
So the community.
My community was beaten to death in front of me while I was forced to watch.
So don't look at me like you're better than me.
This is a lot more visceral in comparison to the game, but it gets the job done in both situations. Ellie at this point has lost all ability to reason because she's so laser focused on finding Abby and getting justice for Joel. So she makes her way to the aquarium, and in the game it was a lot more drawn out because you had to take a motorboat and go through these flooded areas encountering the Seraphites nearby, going through a bloater and some infected in this abandoned arcade. Now for time purposes and given the fact that Ellie is not some super soldier or whatever that can take on these people without possibly getting killed, I understand why they cut that stuff out. I would have liked some of that sprinkled in along the way. Similar complaint that people had where there wasn't enough infected in season 1, but she steals a boat that the WLF are going to use to attack the Seraphite Island. And this tidal wave washes her ashore on that island, and she almost gets disemboweled by this local Seraphite tribe. A lot of people I heard argue say that the scene was pointless and they shouldn't have had it in there. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I also think it's important to show Ellie that the universe is trying to tell her, stop chasing Abby, this isn't worth it. And it's only by sheer dumb luck that the WLF attack on the island saves her when the alarm goes off, and the Seraphites are too distracted by the need of their own community. Once again, playing into that sense of community thing that Jesse was talking about. Future Joe again here. If I had to be real, that's probably the one thing about the episode that I didn't really like. I understand the intention, but ultimately, that's probably not necessary. If anything, they probably could have just shown her going past that island or show the explosions in the distance like we see. It's just kind of thrown in there for no reason. And it almost reminds me of the Darth Vader Reva moment in Kenobi. If you know what I'm talking about, you'll know. I don't think it's that bad, but I don't think it's necessary either. So Ellie heads back to the aquarium, sneaks her way to Owen and Mel. There's one thing that I'm really happy they didn't include, and I was dreading it with extreme prejudice. When Ellie falls into this hallway by accident, this dog attacks her, and she has to stab her to death in order to survive, and clearly Ellie is upset over what she did. There's no dog in here. Thank God for that, though, because if there was, I would have been so mad. For reasons I've already stated, all the humans can die except for the dogs. I had to pause the episode and say, thank you for not having her kill the dog. But Owen and Mel are arguing about something in relation to Abby. To rewind back to this conversation that Isaac has with his one sergeant, Abby, along with Owen and Mel, have gone AWOL. Isaac is worried about where Abby might be, but she asks him, are you in love with Abby or something? We got plenty of people like Owen and Mel. And he responds with, yeah, we all have plenty of Owens and Mannys and Mels, but there's only one Abby. Abby, just like in the game, has a reputation of being a notorious scar killer. And knowing that he could possibly die in this attack, Abby's the only one that he knows who could be the potential leader of the WLF. Another thematically relevant moment in terms of community, just like Jesse was talking about with Jackson. But Ellie confronts Owen and Mel in the aquarium, and Owen is shocked that Ellie followed them all the way up here. Using the same trick that Joel used on the cannibals to find Ellie, she tries to get Owen to point to the spot on the map where Abby's hiding, but instead of grabbing the map, Owen grabs his gun and Ellie shoots him instinctively in the neck, killing him instantly. And then we see that Mel got shot in the neck too in the wrong spot. But it's not just that, it's her unborn child that's gonna go. In this situation, it's treated as an accident and a surprise. In the game, it was more deliberate, although Ellie didn't know until a certain moment that Mel was indeed pregnant. I mean, I knew this was coming, but even so, the reveal of the baby bump still made my jaw drop. And I like that they did treat it as an accident. Ellie didn't mean for any of this to happen, clearly. And I think in a way it does absolve some of the guilt on her part anyway, if there was any guilt that she couldn't feel in this situation. But it's yet another reminder from the universe, and I guess you could say God. That's how I see it anyway. God and the universe is telling her this. Look at all the destruction you're causing. Ellie is so horrified and shocked by what she did, she can't bring herself to cut the stomach open. If it were me, I would like to think that I would be able to do that, but I'd be too scared to poke around because what if I accidentally stabbed the baby? And even I was starting to yell at my laptop, just cut it open, get the baby out! I don't know the name of the actress who plays Mel, but her performance in this small moment, just like with Joe Pantoliano as Eugene, it's just heartbreaking. Major props to the actress because, if it couldn't be any more gut-wrenching than it already is, oh my God. And it goes to show that when certain things happen, certain cycles of violence that occur, inevitably there's always some collateral damage. Even if it's not intended, inevitably that stuff's gonna happen. But then Jesse and Tommy show up to bring her back to the theater, and ultimately they decide it's best to go home to Jackson. I would have liked her to have some acknowledgement over the fact that she killed an unborn child by accident, but it's probably best to just leave that be because we'd probably never be able to hear the end of it. But then she realizes that she has to let Abby live, and there's nothing that she can really do about it. So Tommy walks off into the next room for a few moments, and then she and Jesse have one final moment where he wasn't sure if he wanted to go back and save Ellie, but given what he knows and how he cares about other people, he felt like it was a duty to go find his friend. Kind of echoes what he says to her in the game when he follows her to Seattle, that my friend's problems are my problems. I've said that for a couple of good friends of mine who are in certain sticky situations that they didn't ask for them to happen. And as selfish as Ellie might be, we know if someone she cares about is in trouble, she'll do anything to help them out of there. But then a certain commotion happens in the next room. Ellie and Jesse take off to investigate. Jesse is shot in the head, dead instantly on the floor. Just like in the game, Abby has shown up, and she is here with a vengeance. In both situations, this is the moment of peak tension. We are caught completely off guard. Ellie tries to reason with Abby, but Abby doesn't want to hear it, pointing her gun at her ready to shoot her, and then the screen cuts black with a gunshot sound. Craig Mason mentioned this in the Last of Us podcast episode. You go out looking for the devil's gonna come and find you. And just like in the game, the perspective flips to her side of the story, Abby's, where Manny comes in saying that Isaac wants to talk to the both of them. She wakes up and goes through a walk in the hallway, looking out of this one area of this football stadium, which is the football stadium for the Seattle Seahawks, and it says Seattle, Day 1. Boom, credits. So now we're going to see in the next season what was going on during that 3-day time span. Just like in the game, it's going to provide some context as to how she got there in the first place. I mean, those of us who are familiar with the game, we all know how this happened. But for those who aren't, they don't know how Abby found Ellie. They can imagine that she was probably tracking them after a while and that she probably found Owen and Mel's bodies in the aquarium. And they can only imagine how she must have felt when she saw that. Given the lack of appearances that Caitlin Dever has in this season, in all these appearances, her performance is spectacular. That visceral rage that's oozing right out of her when she's confronting Ellie, I buy every single second that it's there. I've been holding off on this for a little while, but here's my soapbox moment for you guys. I do love a lot of Season 2, but I gotta be honest, I think it's a little bit of a step down in comparison to Season 1. I know some people will still argue about the whole I'm gonna be a dad scene, which again,
Same old tired playbook.
and also to all those people who are ridiculing the way Bella Ramsey looks,
Go to hell.
I could not care less about how she doesn't look like the character. It's all about the feel and the spirit of the character. Looks are not everything. But my problem with Season 2, it is way too short. 7 episodes is not enough. When they announced that there was going to be 7 episodes, I knew that was a big mistake. There's even talk about a possible Season 4 happening. Given how big the narrative scope is for Part 2, I wasn't that surprised by it. But given this season's length, that just made it more frustrating for me. And because of that, I don't really feel like we got enough of an emphasis as to how far Ellie's willing to go in order to get revenge for what happened with Joel. I think in the game it was done better, where we saw her descent into madness clearly on display when she's mowing down all these people that she comes across, and with her torture of Nora and killing Owen and Mel, that's just more insult to injury in the ways that we're supposed to understand how far she's willing to go in order to get justice for Joel. And this one, it plays out differently. Now, with the 3-month time jump, I understand that she probably would have had a lot of time in the hospital to let all the emotions out that she needed to by talking with Gail in the sessions that she more than likely had with her. And grief hits everybody in their own different ways. Not everybody experiences grief in the same exact way or on the same exact timeline. But I think we could have had at least one episode where we see that crazy side of herself slowly coming out more by the day, where we saw her get more and more unhinged and more willing to do some really unthinkably horrible things. Amanda the Jedi had this criticism of Season 1 of the show, where she felt like they could have offered more, even if she felt like she wasn't being deprived. She said that, okay, there's clearly more stuff there. I mean, just add more flavor on top of it. I would understand the argument, yes, but I feel like there was just enough there in that season to satisfy. But in this case, I feel like I am being somewhat deprived, mostly with Ellie's descent into madness. Most of the other stuff, at the very least, I'm okay with. But again, I think it desperately needed an extra episode or 2. But I certainly wouldn't call Season 2 a letdown. I would say it's still an overall solid show. In comparison to Season 1, yeah, I would say so. But overall as a season, no. I mean, if I had to grade it, I would probably give it a B+, whereas the first season I would give a solid A, maybe an A+ even. I'm just repeating myself at this point, but again, more episodes is what the season needed. If not 9, at least 8 episodes. That for me is enough. But I still think there's a lot of great stuff that has come out of the show. And with the creative team being fans of the series, along with Neil Druckmann having a creative voice, along with Haley Gross, who had a creative voice in part 2, she had a hand in the last 2 episodes. I mean, some people will probably cry foul over that if they don't like part 2. I think she's done perfectly fine, and I think it's perfectly okay for her to be involved in some capacity. If you disagree with some of her creative choices, that's perfectly valid. But there's too much good in here to say that this is a giant D or an F+ or something. So that's really all I have for you guys on season 2. Thank you so much for watching, and to the creators of the show, thank you for this incredible ride these last several weeks. I had a great time talking about this. Please don't make us wait another 2 years for season 3. Have it come out next year. I really don't want to have to wait another 2 years because even with the credits, I was saying more please, more please. I know I sound like Oliver Twist just now, but seriously. However many more seasons come out of this, I will be there on day 1 of the episodes to be released. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are on these last 2 episodes and the season as a whole. What's your favorite episode? What's your least favorite episode? Let's all try to have a civil discussion because with The Last of Us, as it was shown after part 2, it can get really heated and brutal sometimes. Please don't try to rip each other to shreds in the comments. If you like what you see here, hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. And until next time, endure and survive.